State your name and address for the record. Once we've heard from all people, we will close the open forum and move on. Does anyone wish to speak this evening? Yeah, it's usually what we get, so. We'll close the open forum and we'll move to the consent agenda. The chair is looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented or with changes.
I do have one modification.
You would,
Chair, I'm going to move to approve the consent agenda item B, which remove item A for further consideration.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second and the motion is to approve 6B only, pulling 6A. All those in favor signify by saying, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? I'll abstain. Item 6A, approved minutes from regular meeting of November 12th, 2025. Discussion?
Yeah, I would like to modify a comment that was attributed to me on the bottom of page 7 of the draft minutes. Staff, I believe, has some language here too. I'm reading it off my phone. To change the final comment from me on that page to Commissioner Aplikowski expressed concern about continuing to approve higher density development while the Met Council is expected to increase required units per acre in the upcoming comprehensive plan update. He stated that allowing the Met Council to dictate lot sizes and density does a disservice to the city. His comments were made in response to a prior public statement suggesting that non-compliance with Met Council expectations could result in restricted sewer service. I just thought that extra content really reflected what I actually said.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to move approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of November 12th as amended.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'll abstain. We'll move to item 7A, a public hearing for zoning text amendment for wireless communication towers at Hosanna Lutheran Church, 9300 Scandia Trail North. Before I ask the city to make their presentation, I have been involved in this application from Hosanna's representative on this. I have no financial. Would anyone like me to step down? All right, who is presenting tonight?
I am, sir.
Thank you.
So before you tonight, and including a public hearing, is a zoning text amendment for wireless communication towers that has been brought to us by Buell Consulting LLC on behalf of Hosanna Lutheran Church. The request comes from Buell Consulting on behalf of AT&T seeking to improve cellular coverage in the community. While the applicant has stated the Hosanna Lutheran Church parcel is the only suitable location for a tower project, the amendments being proposed are citywide text changes, not location-specific amendments. So staff reviewed this proposal through the lens of the comprehensive impacts across the city. Tonight's discussion is not about approving a tower on a particular parcel. It is about determining whether these broad zoning changes make sense for the community. The applicant has proposed a broad set of updates to the city's tower standards. Their intent is to create additional flexibility on larger, non-residential properties that happen to be located within the single-family zoning district. And just a reminder, these changes would apply broadly in the code. They aren't limited to any one property, and even though the applicant's request is motivated by a specific site. The first is inclusion of towers in the single-family residential district. The applicant is asking that towers be allowed in the single-family district through a conditional use permit. Staff is supportive of including single-family along with the other residential districts where towers can already be considered, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Now, the rest of the request includes several amendments to the tower performance standards. The first is lot size. The proposed change would reduce the minimum lot size in residential zones from 10 acres down to 2.5 acres, but only for properties that contain institutional uses. Currently, 10 acres is the minimum for a tower on lots zoned for agricultural and residential purposes. When I say residential, I specifically mean currently MXR1 and rural residential zones, not single-family residential. 2.5 acres is the standard for lots zoned for industrial and commercial. The reasoning is that many churches, schools, and similar uses sit on parcels smaller than 10 acres, and so the current standard makes it hard for those sites to even be considered. But from a staff perspective, lot size is one of the foundational planning tools we use to buffer large structures from surrounding homes, reduce land use conflicts, and prevent the proliferation of tall structures on small parcels. So this change could have a citywide effect, not just on institutional sites. The second is tower setbacks. The applicant proposes reducing tower setbacks and introducing what's called an engineered fall zone. Right now, the code requires towers to be 2 times the tower height from any off-site dwelling and 1 tower height from all property lines. Those requirements weren't chosen at random. They're based on life safety, predictable hazard buffers, and clear enforcement standards. The applicant's proposal would instead cut the distance from another dwelling to the height of the tower and replace the separaries that have an institutional designation. Our zoning code does not have an institutional zone. The only analog we have is the public institutional use identified on the future land use map of the comprehensive plan, which defines the designation as religious, governmental, educational facilities and lands owned by the city for public use. I'd like to express that staff appreciates the intent here. The applicant is trying to narrow eligibility so that typical single-family parcels aren't impacted. That's a fair goal, but the challenge is that future land use categories aren't zoning categories. They don't carry regulatory weight. Zoning controls what's actually allowed, and tying eligibility to future land use designations could create long-term enforcement, interpretation, and consistency issues. So those are the applicant's proposed amendments. Each one raises some important planning questions, not just for this specific site, but for the broader zoning framework and how towers should fit into residential areas across the city. Now, if there aren't any questions, I'll walk through staff's
Original process would be hugely damaging to residential areas and the livability and enjoyment of those areas. Thank you very much.
Other comments for staff? Seeing no hands go up or anyone speaking, we'll, Tim?
Can you explain the engineered fall zone a little better? Who designs that?
So the engineered fall zone, as it's been presented by the applicant, would essentially be providing an engineering letter that says, hey, if this were to collapse, this is where it would collapse. And essentially taking that as you know, gospel and accepting that as going forward. They would really, in this particular instance, it's discussing property lines, not potentially impact on dwellings that may be around this tower site. But that is essentially what they're proposing. And that does exist within other municipalities. I can't name one right now. I just know that it's a tactic that occurs throughout the lower 48.
And considering the increased wind speeds that we've been noticing, collapse is not what I'm worried about. Wind damage and sending material much more than a vertical collapse zone is something that I am concerned about.
Other comments?
Could you restate the current code for that, for the setbacks?
So the setbacks are currently 2 times the tower height, and that exists around the lake or in any single family district. So having that be 10 acres is a large part of being able to limit. It accomplishes what we need to accomplish. There's enough space to kind of absorb that scope. One thing I want to mention, and I'm going to turn on my laser pointer here.
Questions to staff? Excuse me.
Can you tell me why they needed 10 acres? That seems like a lot of land for one tower.
It's not. It's a requirement that is set in code, and specifically it's because it provides enough buffer to hide the visual, like more or less camouflage the tower. If it was a 2.5 acre parcel, it'd be obvious. It would take up a lot of that 2.5 acre parcel to be able to accomplish that. So that's really why 10 acres. It gives you enough space, 1, for all of the fall requirements, and 2, it really does buffer it from any other parcels that may be around there, visually and life safety requirements.
I've got one near me, and quite frankly, with the little building that they've got there and the number of trucks that they have parking around it all the time, there's no way that they could be fitting that on 2.5 acres.
If this goes through, would they modify the existing 10-acre ones to go down to 2.5?
It would be strictly for what we're addressing here is adding it to single family and making that 2.5 acres. That's the thing, with the caveat of institutional use, which creates a lot of challenges for us.
Yeah.
Were the neighbors notified of the potential building site? Is there any,
All documentations went out for the public comment within 350 feet of this site. No, then I'm hearing no, they did not. It did not go up because of the citywide amendment.
Generally, citywide amendments aren't, we don't do specific neighborhood noticing. Citywide amendments are posted on our website and in the newspaper. Because if this would go through and the applicant would propose a tower and it needed a CUP, then a hearing notice would go out to everyone within a certain radius of that subject parcel.
thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none, I believe the applicant is here. Is there anything you would like to add? Well, please step up, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Blair Ransom from Buell Consulting. Address is 1061 Idaho Avenue in St. Paul. There's just a couple notes specifically related to the tower type and what we're asking in terms of a residential district. When you're looking to achieve a certain amount of height, having a full tower height setback can often really limit you to your options. So if you were in an area, like trying to provide services on the south side of the lake, you don't have a whole lot of options. And there's a lot of single-family property, so you get cornered into a specific spot like the Hosanna Church. And specific to that lot where we were looking to put it 100 feet from the lot line would be right in the middle of the parking lot. So it's those types of situations. That's why we incorporate the fall letter. And what that specifically means is they design the tower to have what's called breakpoints. And so basically when stress is put on that tower, it's not going to rip out of its foundation like a tree. It's going to break at certain points, and that's why it collapses on itself. So those were really the only 2 points I wanted to bring up. I think staff recommendations, we are, in this specific case, we are able to combine the lot, so I think that would be acceptable. But the setback, the fall zone setback really is the main restriction we'd like relief from. So.
Questions of the applicant? Thank you. We may have
Okay.
questions after the public hearing.
Sure.
This is a public hearing. We ask if you wish to speak to this application, excuse me, to the zoning text amendment, please step up, state your name.
Andy has done in seeing what the possibilities are and how they have been able to leverage some grants and things.
Yeah.
Might be interesting, especially up in that area.
Yeah, well, it's where I think I'm very cautious of doing a piecemeal approach that might break the dam. That it might be better to have more of a comprehensive strategy for this rather than have to either play whack-a-mole property by property or all of a sudden there's oversaturation of coverage because everyone put up an antenna because they got paid for it.
Other comments? Discussion? Hearing none. Chairs would entertain a motion. And
Anything else, that's what we're trying to prevent. That's why it's 2 times the height, because it would take an act of God to pick the thing up and spear it at another house for it to get to 2 times the height. That if there's anything that exists on the other, your neighbor's parcel that it hits, then that's what we're trying to prevent.
Okay, so residential dwelling in the definition includes barn sheds, accessory buildings.
I think just to address the concern, an amendment to the applicant's proposal or staff's position could be a dwelling or any appurtenance or structure, residential you know, accessory structure might be sufficient to meet the concern that I think I hear from you is, are we really?
Higher winds that we are getting now can sail a bit, and I really appreciate the 2.5 times.
Is this the newest and latest and best and brightest tower that you're wanting to put up, or is this something that's already existing technology?
This would be the newest, it's being deployed throughout the country already, but yes, it would be all the brand-new technologies, 5G service, all of that.
And so if this one goes in and does well, you'd probably be looking to expand towers in Forest Lake area?
Well, I guess kind of that brings up actually a question that you had. The way that cellular networks are designed, the companies, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, their engineers have a huge database and provide those coverage maps that you guys referenced. So they pick out certain spots to go. It's not really a free-for-all, let's see. I mean, it costs a lot of money. It's a huge capital investment. So if they could have one tower, they would, but they need thousands and thousands to provide the services. So the pervasiveness of towers is not necessarily, you know, by relaxing the standards, it's not going to increase, you know, tomorrow. You're not going to have applications for 50 towers because there's no tenants for 50 towers. AT&T, Verizon, et cetera, they want to minimize their capital expenditure, so they have as few sites as possible. So really relaxing the standards and allowing it, and I would go back to the fall zone setback, allowing those types of things to be included in your ordinance really allows for a better integration of cell towers and service into the community. Because you can do things like camouflage it, you know, provide any sort of conditions you want, but you also have flexibility to say, you know, it doesn't make sense in the middle of the parking lot. It actually does make sense in the corner next to a bunch of trees. But, you know, if the fall zone setback stipulation is not in there, then you don't have that latitude. So you may even run into a situation where one property that makes a lot of sense and everybody's happy with doesn't work, you can't get a variance for it, and you end up searching for something else that might be less appealing for everyone.
Is this only for AT&T, or can other carriers use this?
Other carriers will be able to, yeah. Initially, it would just be for AT&T. That speaks to the request for the height. In my email, I said this would be great to have, not necessary. The reason that we try to add height and maximize it is to allow for additional carriers, because otherwise they could theoretically come to you and say, you know, this tower that, you know, you've approved is not sufficient. So you want to find that balance of having high enough towers where you don't have to have a lot of them.
Other questions, comments, concerns?
Does the city require insurance on these towers? So if one did fall down and injure somebody in the parking lot or next to it?
The city's zoning code doesn't address those requirements. This isn't like a license that we're granting them. It's an agreement between essentially the private operator and that private landlord. It's just the consideration for the city is whether or not we'd allow that use there.
Okay, thanks.
Susan?
Mr. Chair, I'd offer a motion to recommend to the City Council adoption of the zoning text amendment as presented this evening, with consideration by staff of the further definition of residential dwelling.
I have a motion, I have a second.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion.
Could I ask a clarifying question? The proposal that you're suggesting, is that the proposal as proposed by the applicant?
By the staff.
Okay. And then also just the amendment and clarification on dwelling. Potentially, we could tighten that up a little bit to better define the residential dwelling and its accessory building in JJ2N.
Yes, please. I will work on being more specific in the
No,
future.
that's okay. I just, we want to make sure that we're getting onto the record what is the motion. So it seems like the motion is amended. Chair Gerard.
Any other comment?
If this, there's a lot in here, so I might be wrong, but it seems like if they've merged the lots, they could just do a conditional use permit for the tower, right?
We would still have to add the single-family zoning to the current code. It's, our code for towers is absent of any mention of single-family zones, so that's what we're proposing, is adding to and we have the exact amendments that we're talking about. Essentially, Section 2 of the amendment on your screens would be adding that as an accessory use to single-family. That's the first part of the amendment, or the first part of the amendment is adding it to the fancy table that's in our code, that it's you can get a CUP for a tower here. What we're proposing here is adding a tower as an accessory use in a single-family zone, as well as special use permit, as long as the parcel is over 10 acres.
Okay, so this doesn't necessarily open it up for just everywhere.
Not unless you have 10 acres.
And guided for an institutional use.
Yep.
So that would be the other caveat. For land right now would be a single-family zoned parcel, 10 acres in size or greater, but is zoned for, or guided for single-family. They'd have to come back for not only that CUP, but also a comprehensive plan amendment to re-guide that for institutional use. So we really are trying to limit those, not just the parcels themselves by requesting larger parcel size, but also that we're only going to look at those in those future land use areas of institutional. That can also really help ensure that we're not going to get into a pickle later if somebody wants to look to develop, for residential land uses, that we're still trying to preserve our residential land areas for future residential development.
What I'm concerned about is, someone's living in a neighborhood and all of a sudden their view is blocked by this giant tower that moves in next door. And I think that's where going on the smaller lots, I think, is really kind of dangerous for that.
Been there, done that.
Other questions, comments on the motion?
Yeah, Blair, say everything goes well here and with the city council and all that. What kind of coverage does this provide? Does it all of Forest Lake and Scandia and Columbus and Hugo, or just Forest Lake, or just a portion of Forest Lake?
When we present the
Expectations across chapters. Third, to enhance administrative efficiency by removing redundant steps and outdated language that slow down reviews. We've been getting a lot of feedback from the public, developers, even staffers, that a lot of our deliberations and our decision-making takes a lot of time, a lot more time than some comparable cities. This is an effort to start whittling down, finding out where that time is being spent so that we are more development and resident-friendly and when anybody wants to contribute to the growth of the city. Fourth is to support predictable development review, creating a clearer, more intuitive framework for applicants times versus an overview, then as a discussion draft with early language, then at a public hearing, and ultimately as a recommendation that would go to the city council for their approval. This structure ensures you have multiple opportunities to weigh in before anything becomes final ordinance language. Packages will come forward regularly, aligned with your meeting schedule and city council cycles. Predictability is a core part of the Boost approach for staff, the commission, applicants, and the public. We're already in the process of developing Package 1, but we want to hear from you. The Planning Commission sees more practical impacts of the code more than anyone. You see where a resident has to go through 2 city processes for 1 shed. How can we refine those processes so that it's, 1, easy to navigate, that we work internally a lot of the deliberations and a lot of the approvals that don't require a second track. As Abby has developed her team around her and as building has come in, we're working closely to understand how those 2 building permit processes and our zoning permit processes will work together more harmoniously to streamline things for the residents and developers that are coming through our doors. In addition, it's very important for us to make sure that we are addressing the concerns that are coming from the feedback, the unsolicited feedback that is coming from residents and our developers, and making sure that a lot of the hindrances that we have when we are required to go to the Planning Commission and the EDA and the Parks Commission, that's not saying those aren't legitimate paths, but when you have to wait 2-3 weeks in between, those 2-3 weeks add up for meetings. Are there meetings that we can go through that could be decided administratively to push the ball forward so that we are saving 6 weeks, 2 months, 4 weeks even on a developer, for a development review cycle for a developer, or in a decision for a lot consolidation, or something simple like building a new house with setbacks and all those things. That's really what we're trying to address, is where do the efficiencies exist? Where are the inefficiencies now that we can address that are the low-hanging fruit? Understanding that this is the first year of this initiative, that we're not trying to overhaul the entire code now. We're trying to manageable, iterative steps so that as we go forward next year and the year after, that we start getting a code that is manageable, that benefits everybody in Forest Lake, as well as the staff's time and the ability for us to continue to grow smartly as we have in this city. That's it. So my request is, hey, reach out. Let's have
How does
conversations.
this mesh, or doesn't it mesh? We had a firm we were using to do some zoning. We moved incrementally. I think we renumbered some stuff. Are we using them? Is this all come in-house and we're starting over from square one? I'm just trying to see, what did we do so far, and did it do any? Because we also, I believe, we came up with a list for them to work on first, and I know we put signs at the bottom.
Signs in Shoreland, I believe, are at the very bottom of our update list. Those are great questions, Chair Gerard. So we had engaged the services with MSA Consulting Services Professional, I don't remember, MSA. And they really helped us with taking a look at the analysis of the code. Where are some of those opportunities and constraints? Where are the gaps? Where are some of the overlaps? The overlaps are a lot easier to identify than those gaps. What MSA really did in their first phase was take the code and develop a new architecture, put like with like. Now it's a lot easier for us to start to see where those gaps and overlaps are. And so the work that they've done hasn't gone to waste. It's teed us up for this next step of the process. MSA, the work that we did with MSA, at least with the first phase of the contract, has been completed. We haven't engaged with them on any sort of subsequent phases. And partially this is because we do have staff now that can assist with this. Also, throughout this last year, when we did have a permanent vacancy in the department, Bolton and Menk stepped back into our zoning administration role. So some of you may remember Bolton and Menk was here between Donovan and even after I came, before Ken had started, even a little bit after Ken had been here. And Bolton and Menk's administration of our code has become, to us, a lot more valuable. Nothing against MSA, but they don't know the code as well as our consulting planners at Bolton and Menk. And so what we have, between myself, Nathan First, and Madison Richard, whose names you've seen, faces you've briefly seen over the last few years, the three of us have been able to really sit down and say, okay, these are areas that we know we can easily fix really quickly. And by really quickly, I do mean within these next few months. Bringing in Michael and Stephen, they're kind of shepherding this next phase, the Boost Initiative, to keep that ball rolling. They just put a fancy title on it for you, which is good. I think it is, but the idea is we're kind of continuing on those exact plan of what we had anticipated before. While the commission has commented in the past of areas where we'd like to see some improvement, we have worked on some of those. You might remember the landscape ordinance amendment this year. We did that this year. That was kind of one of those, we thought it was a low-hanging fruit, took a little bit longer than we anticipated. What we really are hoping to do in these next 4 months, so just over a little bit over the first quarter, is processes, procedures, and overwhelming redundancies. That's really some of the areas that we're really trying to focus on. We believe in these 3 phases or 3 packages, that with the first 2 packages, we could have all processes and procedures completely updated, more modernized, kind of with the industry standards and what works for Forest Lake. That 3rd package, we would then go back and take a look at some of those low-hanging fruits, certainly not signs and shoreline. But really going back and taking a look and probably addressing, I know that this is, as Stephen had mentioned, that this is the first year of the Boost initiative. We know confidently that the way the development season's going to run this next year, that come April, May, we're not going to be probably likely to give the attention as we're to the zoning code, to the Boost initiative, as much as we can right now, and as much as we probably could in October of next year. And so I think to summarize that all up, the work that's already been done is not getting scrapped. We're just building upon that and keeping that initiative moving along. I know before we walked into the room, Chair Girardi, you had said, are we going to have the zoning code updated in a year? And I'm like, yeah, we won't. We won't. The zoning, and I do think, though, that even though we won't have attention, April through October because of the development season, we were able to get the landscape ordinance done mid-year this year with only 1 permanent staff in the house, right? That was just me and our consultants kind of helping a little bit as well. I think that we'll be able to continue on additional Boost initiatives through the summer, but in those small segments. Let's just look at fences. Let's just look at animals. I don't know. I'm trying to pick non-controversial items at the moment, just off the top of my head. The reason, though, I say that this probably won't be done within a year is throughout this year, we're going to start conversations about the 2050 comprehensive plan. And one of the things that's going to happen is as we're looking to modernize our code right now, we're going to be going through community conversations about what is Forest Lake of the future. And lo and behold, that's going to affect our code. And so it's going to kind of be this continually evolving thing for the next few years until that comp plan's done, with the hope that by the time the comp plan's done, within a few months afterwards, our zoning code would be finalized completely for that whole new modern era. And that's not to say it's going to take that long. I think that these small Boost initiatives after this first, we'll just say Boost,
Boost 1.0.
this first Boost, I think is going to carry us quite far in just our ability to navigate this code a lot better. And then we'll be able to get those little ones here and there as we keep going. Does that answer your question, Chair Girard?
Perfectly.
It was a lot of words, I know.
It doesn't surprise me. She answers questions great.
I have a question. Do you have any opportunities for volunteer people that can help this process that doesn't meet on Wednesdays?
That's a great question, Martin. I think that this first kind of subset here that we'll be looking at, these first 3 through the spring, I think that it is a lot of staff coming to the Planning Commission with something and saying, hey, what do you think? Checking in with the council, getting an ordinance ready, bringing it right back. A lot of this spring's Boost work really centers on just operations, how we're doing what we're doing. I wouldn't imagine that we necessarily need committee work during this first few months, but I do believe that there is merit in having a committee, a couple members of the public, member of the Planning Commission, member of the EDA, the council, to bounce some ideas on after we're kind of cherry picking those little things, certainly when we work on signs and shoreland.
I have a little bit of experience along this line in that when I was in my former job, we used, in corrections, we used the 10 code, which was pretty outdated system, a lot of faults, a lot of a lot of trouble with that. We went to this new called ICS system, where it's all plain language. And I think this looks like something like that, where you just make it more simple, more, if it's about a code for plumbing, you would just maybe call it the plumbing code instead of some technical term or something like that. So I think this is probably something that's a long time coming, that's been needed to kind of navigate through the codes, so. Good job.
Yeah, not yet. Just wait until we execute it. But thanks, Martin.
Susan?
I've got a few questions. When you talk about clarity, you talk about the differences between technical and narrative structure. Are you planning on a technical or narrative? I mean, which way are you wanting to?
I think ideally, at the end of the day, we want to have something that someone can pick up and know exactly where to look, what to look for, and find it in one place and not have to flip. Oh, what's this? Where's the nonconformity for this? And looking at 6 things. We just need user-friendly, clear, deliberative, focused code that will help streamline things. And then there are the additional processes that exist throughout the city that we also want to address in due time to make sure that our code updates, the efficiencies we find in the code are being matched by the deliberative process of the city.
But as you write the code, are you looking at a technical structure and the language in a technical language? Or are you looking for something that is more narrative? In other words, is this geared for developers, engineers, or is this geared so that Joe and Jill can also understand our zoning code?
I think ideally it would be Joe and Jill because the developers would be able to understand at that level as well. You'd reach the whole population. That's really what we're trying to do, is make it as user-friendly as possible for anybody who, whatever their background is. Are they redoing their first bathroom in their house, or is this the 6th neighborhood they've built? That's who we want to make it for, all of them, and have it written in a language that is able to be understood, what the processes are for them to go through to build that bathroom, because it will be a similar process to the developers go through, with ideally timelines that match the level of effort that is required there. That's really what we're trying to do, is make things as nimble as possible for this city to be able to make the best decisions going forward and not have the delays that come with a lot of the processes that we've inherited really over 20 years of code.
You talked about differences between sections and trying to make sure that they are consistent between sections. How will you do that while recognizing the needs of, for instance, an MXR versus a rural residential? I mean, so that yes, there are consistencies, but those are different kinds of neighborhoods and different areas of the city. So how will you determine which differences between the sections need to be there to keep the uniqueness of that particular portion of the zoning code versus not duplicating extra areas?
I think right now, our strategy is to utilize the expertise that this city has invested in City Hall, utilize the staff to look at what we think is the best use, what's the best focus, how do we create harmony within those sections, and while accomplishing that user friendliness. But also, this isn't being done in a silo. This is being done within the administrative bodies that exist that guide decisions for this city. You being a primary stakeholder in the development of this code. So as we bring things, and you're not seeing that what you just described, then let's circle back, and through the processes that we built, there is time to build in, like, hey, I don't think you're preserving what the definition of MXR1 compared to rural residential. How can we? These are the issues I have. Let's address those. That's the purpose. Is not to bring you final product, bring you our recommendations, and then you help guide the implementation of those recommendations, or derail them, if you will.
Commissioner Young, members of the commission, if I might just also piggyback on that. One of the things that we're finding in the comments in the staff report and the presentation, where we talk about things like differences in the code. Tonight, you heard an example of towers. Right now, our code does not allow towers in the single family, but you heard that they are allowed in other types of residential districts. And that's a really good question of why, right? And why is it in one versus another? And those are things that we will vet through, especially when we start looking at those uses and standards. Right now, this first couple packages of the Boost Initiative really focus on some of those gaps and overlaps or those differences where we might have the word nonconformity or nonconformance in 4 different sections of the code. And we just know as staff that we have to make sure that this type of nonconformance, we look in code section A, B, and C to make sure that that it's fitting all 3 of those parameters. That's asinine. And I mean, like, that is just not, and there's absolutely no way, most of you, give credit to the folks that have been here for a while, but there's really no way that the general public, the Jack, the Joe, the Michael, the Stephen can navigate this successfully. So that when we talk a lot about those differences, it's not always about those uses and those areas of the community we're looking at. It's the differences in the application of terms throughout the code. Those are some of those big areas where we're consistently kind of having to say, what does this really mean, and what did it say over there, and how does that work? Does that
Yep.
help better clarify?
Yay, big time yay on your goals on usability. On the process efficiency, and I'm seeing that the planning commission gets a draft for discussion, and we get a one-time shot at it in your plan here. But then the council has the informational update and the opportunity for input. Sometimes it would be very helpful for the planning commission to know, okay, we're seeing this draft, what did the council have input? I'm wondering if, as you look at that, perhaps the council would give their thoughts on what they've heard and what they've perceived. Staff say, okay, we'll take a look at that, and then bring that draft to the planning commission so that we have the benefit of the policy makers' policy goals to what you're doing before we make a recommendation on the specific draft language. Because I can see where, especially looking at previous councils and the way we've done things, that we may spend time working on a discussion draft and not understand what the policy goals later might have been.
That's a great point, Commissioner Young, and I think as we work on subsequent packages of the Boost Initiative, that this schedule that we have might end up changing, where we might be touching base with a committee or a joint workshop between 2 bodies. We've utilized those before. I believe we're confident in these 3 packages that we really see that we're hoping to work on, that we are working on this spring, that we already really do have that direction from the council of clean up the code, make it easier to read, make the processes simpler and more refined. If there are those
Whatever any developer wants, said developer gets. There's a perception in other areas of the city, well, you can't have any development because no developer gets anything that they're looking for. What is a predictable outcome?
I think it's more or less a predictable process to understand the deliberations that are required. A predictable outcome is when you apply for something, when you start the development process, that outcome, that process is what's predictable, and it's not, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do that because, as Abby just said, there's 6 different places where nonconformities are where what they're proposing in one place what they're proposing is not justified or allowed, but it seems like it's allowed in one part of the code. That's really what we're trying to get to, is make sure as people are coming through, whether they're, Jack and Jill or, big developer, billionaire, that the understanding of the process is predictable. They understand what the next step is at all times.
So the process is predictable, not a predetermined outcome.
Oh, no, I think that
Okay,
that
so
if predetermining outcome, what's the purpose of government at that point?
Right, so we were looking for predictable processes,
I
not
think
predictable
that's better
outcomes.
verbiage.
And then, it sounds like you know what your first three packages are. Do we get to know?
Oh, no, I think I have them up on the screen, and we're just really, this is kind of like our brainstorming as our team, is essentially, this package one is what our team is looking at and what they have been looking at since September, even before I started.
We've got a whole lot more. And so that first package really is looking at those administrative things. A lot of them that I think those processes and procedures were in place potentially in the township or even the city before the city was the big city it is now. And I think that we, in my time here, have been able, though I don't have the same legacy as some people on this body, I think in my time here, I can very clearly see where those roots are and moving forward.
And we can be rest assured that if we need an extra meeting, we'll get an extra meeting, just like we did with the landscaping. They're gonna want us to move, but we can be, I don't wanna use the term obstinate, but, we can say, wait, we need another meeting, and they'll be fine with it. As long as we continue to move forward is what I think they're.
Could I have on the record that I think this schedule is incredibly sporty, so anything that could kind of like allow us more time to deliberate on things would be welcomed to make sure that we're doing it right and we're not trying to hit a target, hit a goal line that really exists in our mind of like this development season. That's really what's guiding this, is trying to have this stuff done ready for development season in April, May. So, but any time that is needed to support deliberations will be there.
Andy?
You done?
Yes, sir.
I was just at a training in Washington for a few days, and one of it was how to properly use AI. I know I was very skeptic of AI, but when I realized how they explained to use it, this sounds like a very good application where you're asking it, you need to program it. You don't want to just do it raw, but you can train it to compare things and then streamline, and it can tell you what's missing. And I think using that to help compare to specifically other cities, rather than doing it all from scratch, I think could really, really take a lot of burden off the staff too.
And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's definitely a resource that we'll be using exactly as you just described as with our 10 peer cities. Because that's really what we're looking at, is like, hey, how are they doing things? There's no sense in like spinning our wheels to recreate something from scratch. If something's working for another city, here, there, or anywhere, then let's figure out what it is and bring it here and say, hey, this is what somebody else is doing that we think has a lot of merit. What do you guys think? How can we customize this? But utilizing any resource to be able to be as efficient as possible with this big task in front of us.
Steve, we have some newer members. Do you have the 10 peer cities off the top of your head, what they are?
Wyoming, Hugo, Lino, Stillwater, White Bear, Hastings. We got 6.
Yeah, most of them. I don't know
I
what
have
they
a
are
list
either.
in my office. It's stuck to my wall.
Yeah. The other ones aren't maybe as close as the
Right.
ones
Yeah,
that,
there's some that-
prior.
Not
it's
Prior
not
Lake,
Prior
but
Lake,
there's one down there and there's one out west.
Yep. Yeah, so,
Similar size
we
scale.
haven't necessarily reviewed that, I don't think, in a number of years. That might be something that our council looks at in the next few years, but those are the ones that we tend to look at as a city for a lot of different things. From a planning zoning perspective, I also have a list of probably another 10 to 15 more communities that have a little bit more similarity just in terms of land development patterns, their growth rates, and their Met Council classifications. Not to say that their tax rate and things and their population aren't important, but there are other communities that we might pull in to say, oh, hey, or cities that are even larger. Blaine is a really good example, right? Blaine's been through the growth, Ramsey, they've been through the growth that we're experiencing now, we're gonna continue to experience. And so taking a look at some of those sections of their codes to say, how have they addressed X, Y, Z? I think we could, sometimes looking at those communities that have been through things and updated it as a, I don't want to say reaction, but as a learning lesson can always be a good way to look at things. I do hear what Commissioner Aplikowski is saying, though, is that this isn't kind of the era where we have somebody sitting and making the table and, yes, there might be some of that you'll see. It's not going to be 10 cities. We're probably going to be, focusing a lot on Lino and Hugo and maybe even, probably not Stillwater as much, maybe White Bear a little bit or White Bear Township. Those communities that are close to us, how are they kind of handling these processes and procedures? I just got a frowny face look, so White Bear Township is not one we would
No,
ever
no, I
consider.
like White Bear Township. I just don't want cheek by jowl that we've got Hugo that is pretty sterile and not,
This isn't necessarily for standards and uses. Remember, when I talk about some of these things right now, we're really just focusing on this
Process.
first processes and procedures. There's a big focus of this first 3 packages of the boost.
now you know why I very seldom play poker.
Oh, I've known for a while. I can see. I know the words that.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Anything we want to discuss?
Thank you very much. This is gonna be awesome.
I really hope, it's really something that, as Michael and I have been working together, he's been noticing things immediately. I think it's very, it's a perfect time. I love Forest Lake because I saw the future for it, and this is a great way to be able to contribute to preserving that great future in front of Forest Lake. I do like the acronym. I think that should be on the record. And Abby used it about 15 times, so yeah, that was awesome.
Quickly, I'd like to bring to your attention, some time ago, we had Forest Lake Cannabis, which was located over here by the mobile home park. That process was brought before the city council. There were some things kind of mismatched a little bit that we were all kind of discussing. One thing was the proximity of that. That was a topic of discussion. But we also brought in the city attorney's comments on some things too. One of the things is they applied for their licensure, which would allow cultivation and such underneath their permitting. We were a little concerned about that. I asked the city attorney regarding that, what the Office of Cannabis Management would do and how would they enforce things or something. That is underneath their license, so what's saying that maybe down the road they slip that in? And then how do we handle that? If it's just through like our CIP or whatever matters. And she was looking at through the statute and stuff, and their representative was pretty adamant that, well, we're not doing it, we're not doing it. But however, she said there's nothing in the statute that she could locate for next year. We decided to just postpone that position for a little further down, maybe into the budget. But as far as like the regular patrol officer thing, their hires or whatever to replace people that are either retiring or whatever still stands where it's at right now.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So it's not a net loss of.
No, it's not. It's not like we're not taking a sergeant's position away that they already have. This is like a incoming, something that they're looking for as aggression goes, to add another sergeant that would make them whole for all their shifts. So this position, I think, would probably be like right now, that on some of their night shifts, they don't have a sergeant as a supervisor. So then your senior officer or whoever would be the person in charge at that time.
Other questions?
If I can also, Chair Gerard, just comment, just for clarification, Police Department did, we have a 10-year staffing plan, and so starting very early in the year, all staff positions are proposed. The council worked through a number of slating them this year, next year, that sort of thing. Police Department, if I remember, did get approved for 2 new officers and a new administrative support. So
Community
the
service
sergeant position just wasn't accepted for the 2026 budget.
Correct.
So we are adding additional police officers in 2026. I just wanted to clarify for the record so that, just to tack on a little bit, that we're not, as Councilmember had said, we're not taking positions away. We're just electing to not hire one more additional beyond the 2, I think it was 2 officers that were approved.
Correct.
Community service officers.
Thank you for the clarification.
And you can take it back to the council that they also have a good holiday season as well.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Abby?
I don't have any updates aside from, we're trying to bring in new staff. I think I maybe shared it in the last planning commission, but I kind of keep saying it out loud. We've moved the building inspections division over into the community development department with the hiring of our new building official, Jason Wagner. When you look at our planning zoning team, our building inspections team, and our code enforcement staff, we've onboarded in community development 5 new employees in 6 months. So we're starting to work to get our boats rowing in the right direction, and I'm really hopeful that in 2026 we're going to make some good headway and kind of just helping improve the all-around development climate in Forest Lake, because I've heard that it hasn't always had the greatest reputation. But that being said, I know that none of you have difficult positions sitting up on this dais as much as the council doesn't. So I want to thank you for your service this year, and also echo, I hope you have a good holiday season.
Will we see you in early January then?
You will continue to see me. It is my hope that I will continue to support my staff, at least through the first quarter. I want to make sure that they're comfortable and confident in helping all of you in your work. I'll continue to show up as long as you need me, but I also don't want to enable them, so.
Oh, that wasn't really my question. I don't know if we had a meeting in early January.
We do,
Oh.
January 7th. Planning Commission's January 7th.
That's the second Wednesday.
Stephen?
Yeah, I got a couple updates. One is we have open applications for the future vacant planning commission. It's currently on our city website for anybody interested in joining this merry band of commissioners. So just to let the public to know that, as well as you all.
Do we have terms expiring in December?
They expire in January, both Chair Gerard and Martin Hoyman's term. And so Martin has elected to not continue to serve. He will serve the remainder of this term through January. Appointments always happen at the end of January for their first meeting in February. So I was arm wrestling Paul in the hallway before he came in to, I think I maybe won the battle that he needs to contact the clerk's office, that he will continue to serve, but I cannot.
So early, we'll have some development discussions early on in 2026.
Where is McKinley Creek?
It's the Gustafson property.
On the southeast corner of Clear Lake, off of Fondon Avenue.
Oh,
Keep your opinion to yourself.
It's a good plat. We're reviewing it right now.
Michael?
Just have a happy, safe holiday season.
Thank
welcome
you.
aboard.
Thank you.
Andy?
Nope.
Tim?
Good.
Susan?
Nope.
Jesse?
Nope.
Martin?
I'm good.
I have nothing. So with that, the chair is looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. And once again, I wish you all a great holiday season, a safe one. Look forward to working with you next year.
You could consider applying for planning commission.